Hi, welcome back to Not My Monk Life. I'm Sky,
And I'm Aisha.
and it's good to see you or for you to see us. This episode is going to be our discernment episode. So it's kind of like crossed my mind today because we're taking a week off of posting and even deciding what to put up. We had the possibility of being able to pull up an old episode that we'd recorded like a year and a half, 2 years ago, and just having that discernment both on our own of like, no, maybe not. And it's like we're making great points and it's like it's us speaking, but it's something where we didn't launch our podcast until when we did for a reason because it was like time and we were like we recorded like two episodes back to back and we're like it's time. We did it. We hacked the matrix. This is ready to be released to the world. And so having that same that discernment of knowing that even though we're skipping a week of posting, not putting that pressure on ourselves of just getting something out. Instead, being like, okay, no, like we want to make sure that not only is content quality, but that it's stuff that we want to put out and connect with our audience. And maybe us a year and a half ago we weren't quite communicating the way that I think is most effective with the audience that we want to have. And, allowing space for us to be able to say no to ourselves when doing something like creating a podcast together and putting it out into the world.
That was just so well said. I wanted to ask you first, for you, what does discernment mean and what does it look like?
I feel like for me, discernment means just hearing that internal voice and knowing what feels good and what doesn't, and knowing like just because something doesn't make sense based on what I've been told people are supposed to do or how people are supposed to feel doesn't actually change the reality of my situation. Making sure to always lean into like, no, this feels right, so I'm doing this. And half the time you're just like a step ahead of the game and you made a move before everybody else and now you're like already where people are trying to go. Or you push back that feeling and then you're just deep in a hole of sludge and craziness. And keeping that voice as clear as possible and not questioning it and just going, yes, and okay, sure. Doesn't quite make sense, but let's just do it. And it all makes sense at the end. And I feel like I've gotten that advice a number of times of just like, listen to that voice and figure it out later. And that's why it's been, I don't know, the best advice to receive. And something that I've held on to a lot, where it's just really great to just don't question yourself or question your instincts. Always just lean into it. And life starts to make a lot of sense. What about for you?
Similarly, discernment for me personally is always tuning in and understanding one, where my reservations or limitations are, and understanding where that specific voice comes from. Like, is it my gut, or is it my head, or is it another person's voice? Discernment isn't coming from a place of fear, but it's that awareness and that emphasis on trust in acknowledging the other factors, acknowledging the perspectives, acknowledging, okay, it doesn't always mean that I'm exercising discernment when I'm in danger or someone's in danger. It really is just that awareness and going back to that space of, okay, I see what's up, but I'm going to trust that I know how to take this direction, or I know which direction to take. Yeah. I
Yeah.
had to say it like that just in case I cut everything else out.
Gonna wrap it up right here so editing so we can edit. Do you feel like how else do you feel like I don't know if I'd call it someone else's discernment or not, or someone else's expectations around your discernment, putting expectations onto your discernment within relationships, whether it's a romantic relationship or otherwise. I think that applies like all sorts of relationships, like your mom
Yeah.
is like, my mom loves to send me safety videos. And it's like, make sure you remember to keep those keys between your knuckles every single time you leave the house. You better do that. And it is in a sense questioning your discernment, but also from a parent trying to educate your discernment and help shape your discernment. And I do think that's a thing they experience in like a parent or even in a romantic partner, which is weird with a romantic partner. I don't want to call it weird, but it's different because it's two grown adults. How else do you feel like, yeah, that world of discernment within relationships has affected you outside of, I don't know, outside of people on the street and interacting with strangers? Do you find it affecting like within the relationship itself, or anything more intimate or closer to the heart?
You bringing up the videos that your mom sends you is making me think of the videos that my dad loves sending me at 5 a.m.s of all the Uber drivers that, do crazy stuff. But I'm like, I don't have Uber money, so this is not happening. But thank you for reminding me every single day that this
This
could
could
happen.
happen.
But I'm like, I can vouch that going on the subway, walking, like all that kind of, everything is dangerous in life, but also everything has its opposite. So, but that going back to that point, that just makes me think of my understanding of discernment when it comes to discernment passed on by other people. It's coming out of a place of fear, or you should fear this, so you should learn to use discernment here rather than, hey, just like tune into yourself. Because, yes, sometimes when you go into an Uber, it might be a little sketchy, but not every single time. You shouldn't step into an Uber expecting that this is a high likelihood because that also, manifestation, a lot of attraction. That's also creating this sense of, almost seeking out. I feel like those energetic equivalents, or you're always going to find reasons to be discerning. What I've learned from other people trying to educate me on discernment is, one, you need to have that sense of awareness. And there are a lot of times where I do know that I haven't exercised discernment and I knew better. And I knew better because my gut was telling me something and I just didn't want to believe it. And I think that same thing goes with just when it comes to romantic relationships, for example, and that tendency to just be aware that when guys are trying to be your friend, they might try stuff. And it's like, yes, I get that, but there are also so many guys that can exercise self-control. And having to really understand, okay, this stuff's being fed as a discernment coming from an action or a situation that's bad, rather than this is not the ideal situation, but it's not a bad situation. So how do you use discernment to navigate in a place where it's not, I'm just not going to interact at all? Like guy friends, for example. It's not that I'm trying to cut everyone off and like never have men around me, but discernment is that awareness, and then it's tuning in to navigate how best to move.
Yeah, I feel like even when you speak about male friends, or things that you do with your male friends, there are things that you do not do with your male friends that you do with your female friends. Like there's just certain stuff that's gonna be like much less likely to happen, whether it's like sleepovers or talking about your interpersonal, like your most personal like relationship details, or you're not gonna watch certain movies. I'm not gonna watch Bridgerton with a guy friend. That gets crazy. With a girlfriend, for sure, let's go. So there're just certain things that you kind of learn with time. I think that's also just like aging out of that like childhood mindset of like, oh, we're all, prepubescent, we have no urges, we're all just hanging out. And I think it's like sometimes hard to let that go, of realizing, no, like I have to respect the fact that this is a grown man with grown man hormones and grown man whatever. It's not a statement about me or about our relationship, just the fact that they are a grown man and they do function a little bit differently. The same way, like I'd want the man in my life to respect that these are grown women in his life. So maybe don't be out here taking off your shirt because you look a little too good with your shirt off. Like, don't be doing that. Like little stuff like that. Or it's like, don't change in front of them. You can go to the beach with them and do that because like your mind's like, oh, that makes sense. But don't change in the same room as them. Don't talk about certain details of your life. Don't be a little bit too into it because it's just certain things just trigger weird things. Like don't. But what's so interesting is when you were talking, it made me start to think about times where maybe I've wanted to educate discernment onto a romantic partner of mine. And it's always been like this one thing for me was like, I do want you to know that that girl is in love with you. I just want you to know. It's not don't talk to her. It's not don't hang out with her. It's not da 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 da. But I remember this one time I was dating someone and he had this female friend and she apparently regularly FaceTimed him when she was shopping at TJ Maxx. So to me, I'm like, that is not friendship vibes. She'd be smelling candles on FaceTime while FaceTiming him. I'm like, that's it's giving dating behavior. Is it a crime? No. Am I mad? No. Do I really care? Not that much. But I do want you to know that from that little bit of a thing, I can tell that she doesn't look at you exclusively platonically. I just don't think that that's the case. And I'm not going to sit here and tell him in a sense of trying to control him or his behaviors. It's more so like, I want you to be comfortable. So I just want you to be aware of like the more that you FaceTime her while she's smelling candles, the more she's going to feel towards you. And the more she's going to start feeling love feelings, it's going to get a little complicated. So if you don't want to be out here breaking hearts, maybe like establish some additional boundaries with this person because you're not realizing that she does desire you in ways that maybe you didn't quite wrap your mind around or want to fully address. It's not like that's not a problem on anyone's part. Like no one did anything wrong, but you do have to be thoughtful of the situation that you're in. And so I think that there's a lot of times where like someone's in that situation of someone's romantic partner realizing that this person near them is super into them, and the problem becomes like that person's fault. Like it's your fault that that person near you is really into you and I'm mad at you, and now you need to do all this stuff, you have to control the situation, you da 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 da. And I just think that might be a little extreme to especially place anger on someone for being desired. I think it's okay to add boundaries, but not to like, you know, you can't help it if people think you're amazing. And that's like a beautiful thing to have a partner that's so desirable. Like you're just so amazing. Awesome. That's amazing. However, boundaries, because your safety is important.
I liked how you approached educating that factor of discernment in a way that's purely, hey, like, look at it from this lens. I know you don't mean it in any other way, and I know this is coming from a place of just not really looking at the whole situation or being completely aware, but it's not a fear based. And a lot of times, like we were saying, it can be hard to see something that someone else doesn't see oftentimes, or see that, okay, someone's moving in a way where they might know this thing. I'm thinking of like going back to the Uber videos, for instance, or just parenting. It can come from this accusatory lens rather than, hey, I'm on your side and on your team. And I understand pushback and resistance too, especially if something's on your radar, and especially if you're tuning into the situation. You're like, okay, but I'm not going out of my way to engage this or interact. I'm not going out of my way to get into Ubers. But there is that level of acknowledging and just bringing ease to, yes, no, I know what you're saying. To what extent is it your responsibility to either educate when you see something needs to be spoken about, as well as enacted? Because I feel like in a romantic relationship, yes, if someone's crossing a line, or someone could potentially get to the point where they cross a line and you're seeing that your partner is not being aware, yeah, I think that I've been on both ends multiple times where it's like, yeah, I think that should be called out, but it's also sticky, especially in a romantic relationship where you don't want to feel like you're babying someone. So how do you feel like that conversation should be navigated, or to what point, like where's the point where education needs to be a thing and enacted?
I think that, I don't know, thinking of romantic relationships, all my intuition's like you're not meant to parent your partner. Like it's really not our job to walk into a romantic relationship and become a mother or become a father figure. I think that can kind of kill the romance aspect of a relationship. I think that there are like certain things where you can kind of bring clarity for people, or honestly even like insert yourself in it yourself and make the change yourself. Like I think if I'm, if I'm in a room with my partner and someone else, I can make it very clear to that someone else that he's taken, not in like some obnoxious way, but making like, hi, nice to meet you. My name is Sky. I'm his girlfriend. How are you? Like making it very clear that, I see you. So just watch yourself a little bit. Like it's not anything crazy. And I think a man can do the same. And like it doesn't have to be my partner's fault. This girl is in love with him, right? It doesn't have to be me sitting at home with him over hot cocoa being like, I feel this type of way because this girl loves you. Da, 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 da. It doesn't have to be that over and over and over again. It can be like there are certain things that you can take into your own hands. If they become larger issues, then like troubleshoot together. But I don't think it always has to be, me teaching you how to live. Like if I'm like really bad taking out the trash and my partner comes over, he can take the trash out for me. It doesn't have to be like, Sky, why are you so bad at taking out the trash? Learn how to take out the trash every third day. It doesn't have to be that. It can be, I'm in your life to make your life better. I'm inserting myself into your life, and now I take out your trash because I want you to live a life where trash is taken out. And maybe by observing, he's out of town or something, and I start taking the trash out myself. I don't know. So it's stuff like that where I don't think it has to be like we're sat down and we're educating each other all the time the way that our parents would do to us. It's really like, how do I fit into your life and how do I make your life easier? And, where does that end of like, I'm just reminding you to do something. But it's also a big part of it really is having faith that your partner knows what they're doing and they're going to figure it out and they'll come to you if they have questions. And if they're such a mess that you feel like you cannot, like you have to get on them every day, maybe find a new partner. Like if it's too much that they leave their socks on the floor, you gotta find somebody else. Because you cannot live the rest of your days yelling at this person with their socks on the floor, and then like maybe you have a kid with them one day and they gotta yell at that kid about you have to yell at the kid about their socks on the floor. It's too many socks. It's too many yelling. It's too much. So I think it just has to be seen very differently than how you see like a parentified relationship.
Yeah. I just wish I could take everything you said.
Oh,
Wait.
you weren't on mute. You're good.
Oh.
The audio was off. Wait, come back.
I was just gonna say that I wish I could just take what you said and just clip that and be like, this is our episode on discernment. 2 minutes, period. But what you said, especially about you can take control of the situation, that is so important. You don't have to wait for someone to tell you what to do. I'm learning. You don't have to do something, you don't have to be the one to educate someone else, but taking control without being controlling. And then when it starts to feel controlling, because you can feel into when it starts to feel controlling, when it gets to that level, then yes, okay, let's have a conversation, whether with myself or with you, because something is not working and there might be, another issue outside of just this awareness aspect factor. But I also want to just echo the fact that not everything has to be taught verbally and directly. You can show people how you want them to handle a situation, or how if you're in a relationship and there's something that you just want them to get, and like you're saying, if you're at an event or socializing and there seems to be a little flirty behavior, inserting yourself and just saying, hey, this is me and this is my relationship to this man, is one of the sexiest things too. Men love that. Anytime I've ever done that, it is so hot. So you can always take control in that aspect, and that usually hopefully sparks something to register in another person's mind. But yeah, just going back to how we're defining discernment and going back to really making it your thing also implies that you're doing what you can do when it's a situation that might not be your situation to use discernment on, or yours directly. Discernment can still be exercised through you, just tuning into, okay, what can I do to take control without without being controlling.
I wonder, I guess looping it to a more personal side, how do you feel like discernment applies for you when it comes to like existing on social media and what you post and what you say? And I mean, we have a whole podcast where we talk about our innermost thoughts and we put it online. But like, how does that play a part in how you present yourself online?
I feel like I've played around with this because obviously not an influencer. And that being said, though, I've always been very intentional with how I use social media. And I'm not really here just putting, this is my life. Like, I like to use social media in a very artistic manner. And with that, though, so from that perspective, when it comes to artistry or when it comes to having intentions about what I say, I think one thing that I've had to wake up to a little bit is even if you have the best intentions of what you're trying to say and you're really intentional and you're like, this post means this, considering the medium that it's on, considering the context of what that platform is used for. And I was thinking about this recently because we actually have an archived episode where I was talking about how I had these performance art pieces that like I had a series of Instagram photos, and it was all about how if we explore sexuality within a space that is just the male gaze, like if all we know is the male gaze, and where we're feeling empowered sexually speaking within this space that is the male gaze, like are we really leaving that box? Is empowerment coming from still this male gaze? Now it's just internalized and now it's just us embodying it rather than it being projected onto us. And the photos that I had posted were not family approved. Like they were very intentional, very artful. One of them, because again there were like 3 different posts, and one of them was for my performance art class. Like it was part of my final, so it wasn't I thought through it from an academic lens, from like a social lens, from all these different things. But one thing I've been considering is, okay, this platform is still a family friendly, well, no, Instagram has changed a lot, now it's porn, but before it was not that. Now it would be the perfect post for this app. But considering the platform and what it's used for, and being mindful when you exist on social media, it's a social app. Yes, I always stand by you doing you and not listening to how you should live your life. But if you have a message, if you have something to say, what's the best way to say it so that it can be heard? Because the way we've kind of learned and talked through this, but like the way that something can be taken on TikTok, like there's a different use for TikTok than there is just an Instagram post versus a YouTube, full video. Everything has its audience and everything has its own way of being perceived. So considering the platform that you're using, the audience that you're talking to, why the audience is on this specific app for your message, like how they're going to receive it best. And that's something I go back to a lot when it comes to social media, is still sticking by what I want to do and how I want to use it, and not necessarily it's not approaching it from a numbers place or like, how will this reach the most amount of people? If that's your thing, that's fine. But my intention is always rooted in, I want the people who resonate to resonate. And if that's one person, that's great. But if I am trying to spread a message, if that's my intention, what's the best way for it to be received with this specific platform, with social media in general? Because the way I talk about it one-on-one with a person is going to be different when it's public digitally.
I feel like one thing that I noticed, which I thought was really cool, was like with our TikTok account, where we'll have a few posts that get like, 1,000 or more viewers. No big deal, guys. No big deal. But we'll have posts that get like 120 views. one like, but that is the post that got us a follower. The one like turned into a follower. And so it's not all about like what is getting the most views or the most comments. It's literally just like what resonates with that one person. As we build our community, what found the right person, what brought them over to like hang out and want to keep engaging with our content and keep seeing more. And like you said, doesn't fall back onto the numbers of it all.
I'm thinking about what sparked this idea for you, or what led to this conversation and the episode that we were thinking about. Maybe let's not post this. And it really was, okay, we have good points, we have a strong message, but the delivery, like, let's make it present, because we did film it a minute ago, and the way we approach things even just a month ago is very different from how we approach things now. And yes, we make good points, but how relevant is it for us today, first of all? And then what is that reach going to look like? But first and foremost, it's, do I really feel right? Like, who is this for? And is it really, really for myself if I'm putting this out? Or is it just because I feel like there are a couple points that could really, really resonate and register, and that's important. But if I don't feel connected with it first, or if I feel like there could be more expressed, then it's fair to hold off. And that's one thing I think with art in general, I think about a lot, because there's this idea when it comes to artists and artistry of someone's always going to resonate, so just put it out, put it all out. But one, there's no room for you at the end of the day. And I think it's important to have an intimacy in certain things that are just for you, and unfinished thoughts that like you could sit with, unfinished art that you can sit with, full art that you adore that is just for you. Not everything has to be put out. And you'll know in your body when it's time for other people to see it. Just because it's time for you to express it does not mean it's time for other people to see it.
You don't have to sacrifice yourself for your art. And we are told that so much, like as artists. Actually, there's just this like starving, bleeding, heart on the table artists. And people die for their art, which is really intense. Whereas like, even looking back at that old episode, one thing that I noticed was it was a lot more personal stories, a lot more personal anecdotes, and it just felt very exposed. I'm like, I don't want to be that exposed on the internet, on like getting that personal, because we get personal and we share. But one thing that we did when recording that episode was it was a lot of venting. So it was like we're really venting our feelings, and any sass that I had came out. I was very sassy. It was like just letting everything out on the table the way that we do when we talk to each other. And we still share that space in recording where we are speaking to each other with that genuine nature and that authenticity. But there's also this protection of like what we feel comfortable letting the rest of the world see into our lives, because it's okay to have a private life. And there may be a day where, for at least one of us, I'm looking at you, our private life, people are real curious about it, and it's like, it's okay to have that safety, that protection, especially early on as an artist. Because like you said, they're like, just put it out. And I'm like, no, I don't want all of my work out. And that's just me. You can be someone who does put everything out every step of the way. But I'm also naturally a very private person, and always have been. And finding ways to communicate, because I love poetry, and poetry is like a mystery. What is she saying? Ugh. And so doing something like a podcast where it's so open and honest, there supposed to be some sense of mystery. Hello. Then my whole character development is just out the window. What have I been doing these past however many years? You guys will never know my age. It's a mystery. Just kidding. I'm a young adult.
You still don't know her age.
You still don't know. That's good though. If you like never say your age, you'll never know. And then one day you'll be 60 and they'll think that you're 35. That'll be us.
The tricks. I feel like I've
Hollywood.
said my age.
I think we have said our, actually we talked about our age like 3 episodes ago.
Yeah, I'm like, I tend to reference, and I'm like, the past X amount of years, now you have to go find episodes where I say that because I'm not letting you know in this one.
He'll never tell you.
But no, that's so real. And I think with social media, there's this idea that when you have your best foot forward, that's the part you always need to show that. If you look really good that day, post that photo. It's like, no, you don't have to do that. And I think that there's something so sacred that we lose touch with when it comes to publicizing everything, even if it is just a photo of your face. Like, if you look really good, save that for yourself. Just enjoy that, or save that for your person or your people. Like, do some stuff that challenges that temptation to publicize and keep that solitude with yourself, or keep that solitude with in your private life. Like, I think that's so important. We do tend to miss that because it can be really easy. Like an idea, for example, or there have been moments where I write something that I really, really, really like, and I know it could benefit people, but intuitively, there's this sense of, no, this doesn't need to get out there. Yes, I think it's great and I think it could help people, but there's something very beautiful about being able to keep stuff close to you. And not everything, it doesn't come from a fear of, dang, I'm scared to put this out because people might say this. No, that's very different from intuitively, I'm just being guided to keep some stuff to myself and stuff I really like to myself. And that's okay. Again, that's very, very different from, this is my life's work. God wants me to put this out, but I'm scared, so I'm going to keep this to myself. No, two different things.
I think it is like once you start putting things out there, they belong to the world now. And not all of you has to belong to the world. Like, not every good outfit is for Instagram. I can just look really, really good all of the time. Or like, if you're doing a hobby or an activity, the world doesn't have to know that you got really good at making pots. Or you can make it a social media thing. But you really don't have to. And I think the more visible that you become, the more privacy means something. I remember I saw something a while ago where they're like, I think they're talking about Generation Alpha or maybe someone after Generation Alpha. They're like, one of these generations are going to come out here and they think that like the currency is going to be how private your life is because we've gotten so public nowadays. And I could easily see that happening, or at least it like evolving into something different. But like, you look at like Beyonce, like she's like, you made it big when you're a mystery at this point. No interviews, no nothing. And that's okay to want that. And it's one of those things where it seems like sometimes as an artist, you have to be super exposed to then be able to be private. And hopefully we're in a world now where that's not quite the case. You can hold on to your privacy. It just might alter like what that final goal looks like. Like you might not be, like a Marvel superhero if you want to protect your privacy for most of your life. But you could have a successful career that, is fulfilling for you and your soul. It pays all of your bills and then some. You don't have to be the number one A-list artist that everyone's trying to book for everything. But you can still like follow your passions. And I do think that's one of those conversations around like, when does your passion become a business? And when does your business become a passion?
Yeah. I feel like I say, yeah, after every single one of your points. And I probably cut so many out, but I'll leave that one in. um, but it's so important to remember what your goal is and what your intention is, especially creatively speaking, because it's not wrong to want fame. It's not wrong to want the entire world to look at your stuff, but just remember that comes from people perceiving you from up here. And it's going to fall into this technical lens. And I think about this through dance, for example, because like my understanding, my embodiment, how I embrace dance is different from technical sense of dance. And I've talked about this with my dance instructor for ritualistic Indian dance, and how there's some moments where I'm like, I really want to put this out and choreograph something to this. And we've talked about it because there's this lens of, okay, but once you put it out there, people are going to judge it from a dance lens, not from a philosophical lens that you're approaching it with. even like the movements itself are now going to be just that, movements. It's not going to be poetry that I feel when I'm just improvising in it. Yes, that might be a big part of it too, but there's always going to be this layer of judgment and really approaching it from this technical or mental side, because that you're putting it out in this light. If you're a musician and you put music out, people are going to look at it from the lens that they know music, but they're also going to see it from this innovation, this innovative lens, and this creative lens as well, because that's what you are. You're an artist, you're a creator. But it's still going to be judged within the parameters of whatever it is that you put out, whether it's music, whether it's writing, whether it's, you know, any type of, whether it's a podcast. People have this idea of what good is, what bad is, what flow is, whatever it is. And it's that's also just an important consideration whenever you're putting something out publicly. We know that expect to have judgment, but if your intention is to share a piece of your heart in your art and you put it out, I think that it's also important for you to use discernment in which critiques you take in. Because if you're doing something, again, from one intention, people have different intentions when they experience your art or your podcast. Like, they're going in with an expectation of what to get out of it. I know that when I make music, the type of music I listen to is not the type of music I make. I love composing things that are like film scores, and I love listening to film scores, but I also love stuff that I can really just dance to and groove to. And somehow the stuff I make is very much like the opposite of what I dance to. And so even from that lens, I have to intentionally, consciously leave myself out of it when I'm in creative mode, because I know that my expectations are for me to feel a certain way, because I have a specific relationship with music, that I love my relationship with music, but I have to remove myself from that at the same time.
I was trying to take in everything that you just said, because I had a thought from earlier, but I want to make sure I was giving enough time to what you just spoke on. But I feel like along those same lines, something else that you have to hold discernment for is people shoving their wants onto you. With like whatever you're doing, but definitely in the creative space, like in any job or anything, it's like with any job, it's like, hey, do you want to become CEO one day? Or are you happy being a graphic designer? Which one do you want to do? Or, you know, even with like your content that you put out, it's that drive to hold on to your personal artistic voice rather than fall into something that is like very like consumable by the masses. Like if you shift into this voice, I think that Duetchi talked about this, where after like she had like some TikTok presence, she was leaning into like the TikTok music. And then she went back to like her voice and felt so much better returning to her voice in music. And how that's like a very easy slippery slope to fall into of like, let me edit, let me clip. I think, okay, with our podcast, clipping is one thing, but like adjusting how we talk on subjects is another thing. Like we can clip it as skillfully as we can, but we don't want to just become salacious because being salacious sells, you know? But that is a choice, because there are going to be a lot of people that go, hey, you're doing a podcast. Have you seen this podcast? You should talk about your sex lives and what you like to do and drugs and alcohol and going to the club. And it's like, I'm not just trying to get 900,000 views on this reel. I'm trying to send a message. But yeah, I think holding on to your vision for your own life and not falling into what you're told you're supposed to do with your life and what you're supposed to want, whether it's marriage or kids or a job or a creative endeavor or fame or money. You could be happy making $45,000 a year living on the beach, and that's okay. Just because someone else wants to project their ideas of what they think a good life is, don't fall into that, because someone else could be making $300,000 a year with a family in the suburbs and they can be miserable, but they want you to be doing that too to make more sense to them. So always follow your heart and use that discernment of when you're making life choices for yourself, be like, no, my heart's telling me to do this job or to live here or to give up that promotion and do this instead because this will make me happier. Put out this project. Don't sign with that label. Just follow your heart and figure out where it takes you, because when we look at the things that are sold to us as like glitz and glam and the goals, there's something else behind that, and who knows why they're shoving certain things down our throats, but it's not even close to as desirable as we're told that it's supposed to be. They're trying to pull us over to the dark side or something.
Yeah. And it's important to consider what people are saying, not consider as in internalize it, but I think about this conversation when it comes to artistry, for instance. And part of my intention with art, it is a medium for connection. So if you're making a piece of music, there are some experimental people who just play around with intentionally creating bad sounds that are just really disruptive. Like, that's a whole thing. That's its own genre. There's a conversation around that of, okay, but if everybody else on your team, if the other composers and stuff are sitting with this and they hate it, to where is that line of listening to what you want to do and listening to other people's voices too? Because when things do go public, when you're working with anybody, even if it is I'm the only person who's working on this piece of art, but I'm putting it out for other people, that is a collaborative experience to some degree. And so if your intention is to connect with other people, or if your intention is just to put it out for other people, then I think there is a layer of responsibility of understanding how to navigate who to listen to, what to listen to. And it doesn't mean change your sound. It doesn't mean change your voice. I'm not a proponent of that at all. I don't even think that I'm saying that the responsibility is to really take on and take in what other people are saying, but I think the emphasis is you're responsible for what you take in and what you take on, and not losing the integrity for what you're doing with what you're doing. In our podcast, for instance, yes, we are two adorable girls who could be talking about so much stuff that could make us bank instantly. But we're choosing this modest route. Don't think that we're not fun. Don't think that we don't have a life.
It's none of y'all's business.
It's really not. And I think that's why I love this so much. I love just being in a collaborative space with you, Sky, because we're always on the same page, and we know that there's stuff we could be doing to generate views or income, but that's not our intention. And I really love the journey and the experience of, even if it is slow in other people's heads, we know that the people we get along the way, that's just a reflection or a mirror of our expression. And these people are really like down for it. Most of them, I hope.
I love that. I appreciate the people that we do get along the way and who we collect on our journey. And that's you guys. Thank you guys so much for listening in on our podcast today on discernment. We talked about discernment when it comes to social media and romantic relationships and relationships with your parents, and even in your career and your passions. And for more stuff like this, tune in every week on Mondays or Tuesdays. We're figuring that one out. But we are very consistent. I was holding my microphone upside down, so apologies for that. But we're very consistent, and we're here, and we really appreciate growing our community with you. Thank you so much for listening and for tuning in this week. Tune in every week and follow us on our social media. We are Not My Monk Life on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube, and eventually a million other things too. But that's where we are right now.
Thank you so, so much. And we look forward to seeing you guys, or for you to see us next week.
Bye.
Bye.